Hare Krishna, dear viewers. Thank you so much for joining us on the GBC SPT platform. And we are on day 2 of our series, a Bhakti series for the month of Kartik. And it's my great honor to introduce you to our speaker for today. We have with us Shraddha Devi. Shraddha Devi, she comes from the community of ISKCON of Silicon Valley. She has been practicing Krishna consciousness for over 13 years. She has a very interesting story that she was introduced to Krishna consciousness by receiving Śrīla Prabhupāda's book, and that completely changed her life. She has now taken shelter of His Grace Vaisesika Prabhu and very, very actively preaches, serves ISV community by distributing Śrīla Prabhupāda's book. She's a mentor to so many devotees. And on a personal level, I have seen her so enthusiastically sitting right in front and very enthusiastically not only hearing, but studying Śrīla Prabhupāda's books. So it's my great honor, Shraddha Prabhu, for having you here on the GBC SPT platform. And we're so glad you made the time to be here and share your wisdom with us. So I invite you to share with us how Śrīla Prabhupāda's books are the basis of our Krishna consciousness. Shraddha Devi, please.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Govinda Mataji, for your kind words. It's actually my good fortune to be here today, and especially in the month of Kartik, to be talking about how books are the basis of bhakti. So a big thank you to Govinda Mataji for arranging that for the GBC SPT as well. And also to our dear Shyama Sakhi Mataji and Aradhya Bhagwan Prabhu, who somehow thought of me and, brought me into this schedule while they were planning for this event, which talks about the series of events which talk about the A, B, C, D, and E of Bhakti. And I'd also like to thank the broadcasting team who's bringing this close to everyone's computer or to a smart device. And so my big thanks to all of you, and also Hare Krishna and Danvat Pranams. So I'll go into the B of Bhakti, but after a short prayer to the spiritual master. Om Ajnanatimarandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, when we come to the topic of books are the basis, we have to understand two things. One is, what are books? And second is, what does it mean to say something is a basis of another thing? So books is simple, as we understand mostly, that books is a book is a written or a printed word, which consists of pages which are glued together, which will have some cover pages attached to it. And more importantly, books contain ideas. And those ideas are seeds that get planted into our minds and into our psyche. So that is what books are, as we know. And now, of course, we have different formats of books. There are audio books, there are electronic books, e-books, and so on and so forth. Then a basis, what exactly is a basic? So basis is something which is an underlying support or foundation for a particular idea or for a particular process. So today we're going to talk about how books are the basis for devotional service, or how books are the basis for performing bhakti. So before I go into the details of, how books come into bhakti and what do we do with books, how do we read books, and then after that, what do we do? I'm going to talk about first how you enter into bhakti, and I'm sure every one of you has got a story to tell. It's one of the famous things that when two people from ISKCON meet each other, they always ask, like, what's the story? How did you get into ISKCON? So similarly, I'm going to spend a little while telling you my story because it very, very deeply connects to the topic that we are discussing today. And in that context, I'm going to say there's a Sanskrit phrase that is used, saying, which is used very often, which says, Prataksham kim pramanam. And in Hindi, there's an equivalent which says, Hat kangan ko arsi kya. And I'll explain all that for those of you who don't understand the language. Kangan is the word in Hindi which is used for a bracelet. Like, this is a bracelet that I'm wearing. So this is called kangan. Now, RC is actually something very, very interesting. And I was fascinating when I read first about what an RC is. So RC is a little, device or a little mirror that women will wear on their fingers. Like this over here, they will have a tiny, tiny mirror. So it's actually an ornament. And that could be camouflaged in other ornaments that you wear. For example, you could be having 5 rings and 5 fingers, and then they get connected here. That gets connected to the bracelet. But the key point is that on your index finger, this little ornament will have a mirror. So a lady can be subtly sitting in a group of people, and she just wants to make sure that her makeup is all right. She has the bindi in the right place. There's nothing attached to her teeth. The lipstick is right, and things like that. So without making it very evident, as sometimes people do these days. Like, you go to a restaurant, you want to make sure there's nothing stuck to your teeth, so you pick up the spoon and you start looking at it like that. They were more subtle in the old days, and so they would have this nice little ornament that they would wear, and they would put the ornament, they would put the hands on the lap, and then slowly put their head down, and they could see themselves and they could see their face. So the idea was that if you can't see anything, then you need some evidence, you need some proof for that. So that's, we always say that you're saying something, give me the proof. You're saying the sun rises in the east, show me. So we're always saying, show me, and show me. But then the saying goes on further to say, prataksham kim pramanam. And what that means is that if you're seeing something, then you don't need any evidence for that. So you can't see your face, but you can see your hand, right? So if you can see a hand, then that arsi, that little instrument or that little ornament that goes in your finger, you don't need an arsi to see your bracelet because you can as well see it. So similarly here, when it comes to what is the evidence, what is the role that books play in devotional service, you just have to look at me, look at the screen and look at me. Here I am, completely transformed. And I just cannot express my gratitude to Srila Prabhupada for making such a dynamic change in my life. And thanks to his books that he so meticulously translated. And I'm quoting from Bhagavad-Gita, which was Prabhupada's gift to me. In the 7th chapter of Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna talks about 4 kind of people who come to devotional service. Chaturvidha bhajante mam jana sukritino arjuna. Artho jigyasi artharthi jnani cha bharata rishabha. So 4 types come. They are those who are in distress. There are some who are looking for some economic development, some little Lakshmi here and there. There are some who are jnanis. They know there's absolute truth, there's God, and they want to know. And then there are the inquisitive, jigyasu. So I come into the category of jigyasu. I was at the stage in life where I had met my dreams, whatever dreams a person can dream of, or whatever dreams I could dream of. I had met them. And I was at the happiest stage in my life, very, very happy, very, very content, had got everything that I wanted in life. And so one fine day, I was reclining in my couch and I was thinking, okay, this has happened, and few more things are going to happen in the next few years. And I was just thanking also my stars for this to happen to me. And then the question came into my mind, what next? What is it after next in life, after you have achieved everything that you wanted to achieve? And I couldn't find an answer to that because what I have been trained and the environment in which I was living, the people I was associating with, they were all of the same mindset that I was. And at that time, I thought that miraculously, but now I don't think that. But at that time, something happened miraculously. And that is the very next day. And I used to work in a corporation. For those of you who work in corporations, you know how life is there, extremely competitive, extremely bad. So anyway, so very next day, one of my colleagues who I used to interact with only on a email basis, like you didn't get this thing done, or can you do this, and things like that. She walked into my office and she started talking spiritual things. And I was like, very curious, more getting into it. And she was talking at a different level than what I was accustomed to from my childhood. And then one thing led to another. I started meeting her, and this was in 2007. I started meeting her, and then one day her sister came from Phoenix, and we were just talking about, and I said, I kind of like Krishna. And then he said, if you want to know more about, then you should read Bhagavad Gita as it is. And I said, okay, Bhagavad Gita. She said, no, get it from ISKCON. Buy Bhagavad Gita only from ISKCON. And I said, all right. It didn't stuck, too much in my mind. ISKCON didn't ring, bells or too strongly in my head. And then I kept it at the back of my head and then went on with life as usual. And that weekend, I went to a grocery shop, and with my Prabhuji, and we were doing grocery shopping, and I had asked him to stand in the queue, and we were doing time division, so he was standing in the queue while I was shopping. That way, we thought we'll save some time. And so while he was standing in the queue, my turn came to stop the shopping. It's time for you to pay. And I don't know what happened, but my husband was there. He was going to make the payments, but I came from the back of the shop. I came all the way to the front of the cashier, and I said, hey, take my credit card and you make the payments. And then I went back again to say that, while she's processing the credit card, is there something that I can still buy some more? So I went back there, and then she called me and said that, please come and sign the receipt. So I went there to sign the receipt. So I had to come really close to the cashier's counter. And as I was signing the check there, from the peripheral vision, I saw that there was a Bhagavad Gita standing like that on the counter. So I asked them, is it for sale? They said, no, it's not for sale. It's a sample. And I said, are you going to sell the sample to me? I said, yes. How much is it? So it's $20. I took out cash. I was so desperate to read it. Took out cash and put it in an envelope. I brought it home, kept it aside, and went through the normal chores of cooking, etc., for the family. And then in the night, I said, okay, let me open this book. And I opened this book, and then I realized that it was from ISKCON. Because at that time, I had no idea. I had no distinction between, a book can be translated in so many different ways and can convey many, many different readings. My only exposure to Gita till that time, when I was 47 at that time, was only because I came from an Indian cultural background. There was a Bhagavad Gita at home, which was always at a lower priority than the trigonometry or physics and calculus books that I was reading for doing my engineering. And I had, although I must confess that, and I must declare that or disclose that 9 years prior to that, on my mother's deathbed, I had flown from America to be by her side and to take care of her in her last days. When she went into coma, and they said that her end is going to come today, on that day, I just remembered that, you should do something good. So I picked up the scripture. There's a Bhagavad Gita there. It was in Hindi language. And I read the whole Bhagavad Gita to my mom for 5 hours or 6 hours that it took me to read every shloka. And soon after that, she passed away. But the essence of that is that not a single word of that entered in my understanding. I could not understand. I just read it, Bhagavad Gita, to be read like that. It was only 9 years later on this weekend that Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita came into my hands. And I started reading it. And by the time I told you that I was working in a corporate environment, I was very, very argumentative. with everybody and anybody. And I was on the top of the world. I told you I got everything that I wanted. So I was almost God, And so I started reading Prabhupada's books, and everything that Prabhupada spoke in that book, I could not argue against anything that Prabhupada said, anything at all, anything. And that whole night, I kept awake reading the book, reading the book, reading the book. And then it was morning, 5 o'clock, that I went to sleep. Then I had to get up, take care of the family, etc. And then again, start reading Prabhupada's books. And those days, I was on workers' compensation because I had broken my hands working on a computer. And I was very bitter. I was very bitter because I used to think that there are so many in my organization. Why did I have to suffer? Why did my hands have to break? I was in a lot of pain those days also. So I would go for only a few hours in the office. Some days I would not even go there. So I had some good time that I could dedicate to reading the Bhagavad Gita. And I read it cover to cover. I took copious notes on that. And it was like I was drinking from a big jug of water and lapping it all up. That was my thing. And then at some point in time, the thought struck my mind that let me find out who has written this, because I was not used to doing that. I was not used to being very cognizant of who the writer of a book is, right? You want to learn trigonometry, you want to learn calculus, you want to learn computer programming. Pick up that book and learn it. You get the content, that's fine. There's no concept of, being thankful or grateful or anything like that. But anyway, I think the Gita was having its effect on me, that I said, let me find out about Prabhupada. So I turned to the back of the page, knew a little bit about Prabhupada, and went to the internet and learned more about him. And when I came to know that he had suffered 2 heart attacks on his way to America, and his sole purpose was to distribute books, I could see the connection that he had come in 1965 when I was only 5 years old. And I was going to be affected by his books 42 years later in America. I could see that how Krishna plans things so far ahead in time. And then it slowly started sinking my mind that all that is happening in my life is actually not a miracle. It is Krishna's plans, that he wanted these things to happen to me at certain stage in life. And why did it not happen to me before? I learned subsequently through reading Prabhupada's books is that I had desires and they had to be fulfilled. I could not turn to books. I could not read books. I could not focus and devote my life to doing devotional service till I had all these things squared away. And Krishna squared them away for me in a very nice way. And as I was reading the Bhagavad Gita and reading Prabhupada's purports to the Bhagavad Gita, I was just amazed. And then I realized that the difference between the Bhagavad Gita that I had read to my mom and the Bhagavad Gita that I was reading right now, Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, the difference was in the purports. The book I read first didn't have any purports. I just read the Hindi of it, sometimes read the Sanskrit of it, didn't understand either of the two. But Prabhupada explained everything to me in such a simple, clear manner, bringing in references to other scriptures to augment his position on whatever he was saying. And I never heard Prabhupada for once say that this is my opinion. He never did that. And I think that sold me, because if he said this is my opinion, I would have started arguing. I was dumbstruck by what Prabhupada had done. And then also, I realized as I was reading it that my algorithms for life, for the kind of life which I was leading, it was a very successful life by the material standards. People were in awe of where I was and what I was doing. But Prabhupada shattered it through just one book. And I realized that, like I said, my mind's algorithms were completely messed up. The rules that I had set to do the calculations for my life were all completely wrong. I was, so to speak, barking up the wrong tree, trying to climb up trying to go in the wrong direction. and nothing but disaster was headed on that path. So once I realized that, there was something drastically wrong. For example, I was very surprised when Prabhupada said that in India, people get up and they usually take a shower and then they will offer something to the deity and then they will eat. I was not accustomed to that. I was accustomed to the fact that I had a loving daughter and a loving husband who would sometimes bring me breakfast in bed, which was fine because you had brushed your teeth the day before. That's what I thought. But when Prabhupada said this, and he said that we Indians do it, I was so ashamed. And I said, I'm from India, and what am I doing here? And, I've completely thrown everything, that I would have imbibed from the culture that is there in India. I've thrown everything away, and I have taken to such a horrible way of life. So within the 1 week that it took me to read the Bhagavad Gita, I had given up meat eating completely. I started getting up early in the morning. And then I started rereading the Bhagavad Gita because I understood that, it is not a one-time thing. It is not something that you read on your mother's funeral and then you are a mother's deathbed and then you are done with it. Every time that you read the Bhagavad Gita, and Prabhupada says so many times as to how you read it, you have to read it scrutinizingly. And that's what you do. And every time that you go to Bhagavad Gita, you open up another layer. So it's kind of like a rose bud that you have, and every time you read it, there's a little petal that you're peeling off. And the beauty is that it's not like the material rose. It's a rose with infinite layers in it, and as you go deeper and deeper and deeper, you relish it more and more and more. The key things to reading is you have to read it with faith, and Prabhupada says that in the beginning. Read it with faith and read it scrutinizingly. And I also thought that I'm in the computers line and I have the documentation team that documents all the software that's written, their user manuals, their administration guides, the books everywhere. I grew up reading books. You have to study something, you read books. You want to understand trigonometry, you get a book. You want to understand Java, you read a book. You want to know how to cook, you get a book on cooking. So there's a book for everything. You purchase a blender, there's a little booklet that comes with it. You purchase an iPhone, you get a little booklet on how to use it. So then there's this big thing about what do I do about my whole life? There has to be some sort of a book that's going to guide me. And I'm so grateful that I found Prabhupada's book. The Bhagavad Gita, they say, is a manual for life. And so then one thing led to the other. As I was reading Prabhupada's books, and as he was referring to other books over there, that I understood that I need to do something very seriously about my life. I need to tune and tweak my algorithms. And the good thing is that Prabhupada was giving us all the rules. He was guiding me. He was telling me that, okay, this is the right way to do it. This is the wrong way to do it, all through the medium of the books that were there. So what started to happen was that whatever was the mess in my head, that started to get replaced by better things that Prabhupada was saying. And we have to notice that. We have to notice, and this is something that keeps me straight and narrow on the path of bhakti, because it is walking on bhakti is like walking on a razor sharp edge. Some mistake and you'll fall down. We don't want to do that because then you have to get back up like that. So you have to be on a straight and narrow path. Once you have found something, then don't, unnecessarily rake your brains. We have to rake our brains, but let's not unnecessarily rake our brains. And what I mean by that is when it comes to reading Śrīla Prabhupāda's books, we just stick with what Prabhupada says. He said, if you read the Bhagavad Gita, if you read Chaitanya Charitamrita, if you read the Srimad Bhagavatam, and, if you read the Krishna book, the Nectar of Devotion, some of the books that he lists, those are enough for your whole lifetime. And as Prabhupada was opening my eyes. And that's why I love this prayer which says, Om Jnana Timrandasya Jnananjan Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena. So I was in the darkness of ignorance. I was thinking that success of life means to reach a particular designation, to have X number of dollars in your bank, to own a property in a price location, and things like that. That was my definition of success. I was completely blinded. But Prabhupada opened my eyes and showed me that you have to raise yourself to a higher consciousness. The kind of knowledge that you gained by trying to become an engineer, software engineer, manager, whatever, that was keeping you in illusion. But you have to move towards reality. And I started getting a little feel of that when I was lying on my couch the day I was thinking, what next? Because at some point in time, some part of my brain was thinking that what I have achieved is not real. Because if it was real, I would have said, that's it, I got it, right? But I was saying, what more, what more, what more? So that satisfaction was not coming. And the satisfaction was not coming because I was barking up the wrong tree. And Prabhupada sets us right. And Prabhupada's, Prabhupada's books help your mind's algorithm. And I have to tell you that I come from a Mayavad family. And which meant that, that you are God. And I somehow didn't buy that idea. So I was not listening too much to my parents. And I would, have thoughts of Krishna, but I was not very focused on bhakti like that. And when I started reading Prabhupada's books, and the Bhagavad-Gita is read by the Mayavadis also, by the impersonalist and the personalist. All of them read the Bhagavad-Gita, they look at it, and they interpret Bhagavad-Gita in different ways. Just as, the famous story of the 6 blind men who are just touching an elephant, and then they are describing what an elephant is. Depending on which part you touch and focus on, you will just describe it to be that way. So there are places in the Bhagavad Gita where you can think that Krishna is impersonal. And if you have an impersonal bent of mind, you can go and say that, yeah, this is what it is. This is the verse. This is the verse that, I can use it to substantiate what I'm saying. And the funny thing is that Prabhupada is there, bang, in that purport itself. He will come up and tell you, there'll be a little bit of what I call as Mayavad bashing, and I love it when he says that. So he immediately, it's there. So it's like, Prabhupada is guiding you. And I was immediately reminded of, when I was studying. At that time, we were taken to a factory to show how things are manufactured. And so I went to a factory that did that made bottles. So the different kinds of bottles to store the liquids and, powders and things like that. So they were making bottles. And so they took us to a furnace where they would put the glass, and then, the glass would be blown and the bottle would come, but it'll be all red hot. So the bottle will be red hot. And so if you touch it at that time, it would break. So the idea was to let the glass cool in a very slow and steady manner. So they had a long belt which was moving. And so these bottles, when they were shaved, would come, and they would come on this little belt. And as they were moving along the belt would be moving, and they would kind of go along there. Now, sometimes what would happen is that because the motion, the bottle was kind of start to move towards the edge of the belt. And if you move towards the edge, then you fall down. So I noticed that every now and then on that conveyor belt, they had put some pads like this. And every time a bottle was about to fall, this little pad would gently nudge it and bring it back into the straight line where it was supposed to go. And when I was reading Prabhupada's purports, that's what I thought. That look, Prabhupada is every now and then nudging you, and saying that, don't go down that path. This is what I'm telling you. If I know you're going to misinterpret this statement, so I'm clarifying that to you in the purport. So when it comes to reading Śrīla Prabhupāda's books and why Śrīla Prabhupāda's books become the basis of bhakti, is that we have to understand, we have to get the right thing. And the fortunate or the unfortunate path is that we are living in Kali Yuga. And in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.10, which is like the very first canto, the very first chapter, and just 10 verses down the line, we see there's a very interesting verse there which says, Prayana alpayusha sabhya, kalau asmin yuge jana, manda sumanda mateo, manda bhagya hi upadritaha. So what that means is they're describing the characteristic of people in Kali Yuga, and this particular verse actually fits me to a T. As I was reading Prabhupada's books, why? Because they have short lives. Of course, we have short lives. When I read later on that people in Satyuga could live up to 100,000 years, and there were many who lived for millions of years, it was like amazing, amazing, amazing. And this is Kali Yuga. You have only 100 years, and out of those 100 years, you have to work for so many years, and within a day, you have to work for so many hours. And one would have thought that with this COVID virus, that you would not work longer because you'll work from home and you save on commute and things like that. But nothing like that happened. Our work hours just increased and expanded to fill up the whole day, so to speak. So we are short-lived and we have a short time to spend on bhakti. We are quarrelsome. I mean, I don't have to talk much about that. There's fight going on everywhere, fight on the television, fight on the streets, fight within the house, right? Fight in our minds. So there are quarrels going on all the time. And then we are lazy in doing devotional service. If somehow or the other we get some fortune that we don't have to work too hard, instead of spending our time and trying to find out why I got this good fortune or what is the right use of this fortune that I have got, we just take up the remote and sit on a couch in front of the television. And that was me in 2007. So Prabhupada explains that in Srimad Bhagavatam right in the beginning. Shaunak Rishi is saying that the people of Kali Yuga are doing that. They're lazy in devotional service. They are misguided. Where will you go? Nowadays, everybody has got access to the internet, and anybody can publish to internet, and anybody can go and read any rotten nonsense on the internet. Everybody is misguided. People come on television, they have television shows, innocent people follow them, and there's a big following, and then 6 months down the line, the leader is in jail. Like that, complete misguidance. We are unlucky. We have to work so hard for, too little that we need. And above all, we are always disturbed. So knowing this characteristic of people who are going to come in the Kali Yuga, Vedvyas started to document everything. And why did he document everything? Because it's mentioned in the Bhagavatam that we also have poor memories. So we see that when Sukdev Goswami told the Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj, he was not referring to a book. He was speaking from his memory. And Parikshit Maharaj was lapping it all up. And then he would refer to some old verses and things like that and ask questions. So that was the kind of people who lived 5,000 years ago. But this is an age of degradation, and everything degrades. Everything degrades, including our memory. We are so dependent on our cell phones to know the phone numbers, even of your son-in-law, or have to go to the internet to look up things. You need to use a calculator to calculate things. Nothing stays in a memory like that. So it becomes much more important to document these things and to have them available for us to reference those books. If somebody is misguiding us, somebody is saying something, and Prabhupada always used to say that, ask for evidence. If somebody comes and says, I am the Lord, ask them to show the universal form. If they quote something, tell them which words, which scripture are you talking about? And I tell you, most of them will just shy away, because for most of them, they are just whatever they are saying is mental concoctions. But what Prabhupada says in his books is the real substance. It is backed up by the Shastras, and it is not mundane knowledge. It is coming through us, through the parampara, all the way down. Right? Krishna spoke the Bhagavad-Gita. It clearly says on the 30th page of the Bhagavad-Gita, it spoke to Brahma. Brahma spoke to Narada. Narada spoke to Vyasadeva. The complete lineage is there all the way up to Śrīla Prabhupāda, who mercifully translated that into English language. And I really like the fact that he translated that into American English, because British English is a little difficult to read. I tried some attempts. I made some attempts earlier, but they were all like thine and thou art. And, so it was like difficult for me to read. But Prabhupada's books are written very simply in simple English, but yet But yet, in the process of trying to read Prabhupada's books, my vocabulary increased. There were so many words that I did not even know. And there were such choice and beautiful words that I got added to my vocabulary. And that was because they were describing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. So up and until Krishna doesn't come into your life, those words also won't come into your life. So Prabhupada's big books, enrich our lives. And they are there for us always. And these sages, Vyasadeva and beyond him, right, guiding towards Parampara, Bhakti Vinod Thakur, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Śrīla Prabhupāda, of course, before that, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they all have spent so much of time and energy in bringing us into devotional service so that we can go back to where we are. And so if we think that I'm going to pursue devotional service and I have to listen, right? To understand something, I have to listen. Now, listening can happen in two ways. We can sit through a lecture and we can listen. We can watch something, a whole episode on television and spend 1 year. But we don't have that kind of time at all because we don't know when we're going to die. I'm sorry to say that on a Sunday morning, but that's the fact. It's a fact. So we are as old as how close we are to death. So we all are old that way because we don't know when we're going to die. So we don't have that kind of time. So Prabhupada has taken the essence of everything, and actually that extraction of the essence started from Vyasadeva, who extracted the essence of all the Vedas and presented it to us in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. And where it says that in the Srimad Bhagavatam, if we listen to Shrinvatam Swakatha Krishna, Punya Shravana Kirtana, Hida Anthasto Hiya Bhadrani Vidhunoti Shuhitsatam. So if you listen to Krishna Katha, then all that is material in the heart will go away. And then after that, Nashta Prayeshu Bhaktreshu Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya. So they're taking Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya, which means that you have to serve Bhagavat. And you can do that in two ways. You can do this by serving a person, Bhagavat, right? A person who follows the instructions of Bhagavatam in life, or we can serve Bhagavatam itself. Because as the Padma Purana says, that Bhagavatam itself is Sri Krishna. So the key there is Nityam. Nityam means that we have to do it daily. So having entered into devotional service, now I realize that I have to do this practice daily. I have to do it daily. Number one, I don't know when I'm going to die. So better make use of the time that we have right now. And read it from the right source, because don't be misguided. Also, set up limits on how long do you want to and how much do you want to read. Just don't go and pick up any literature. Have certain goals in life. What are you exactly aiming for? Where exactly are you going? And Prabhupada has already given us a list. And when we say that Om Ajnanatimrandasya Jnananjan Shalakya, so with the ointment of Gyan, the spiritual master opens my eyes and so shows you knowledge, and knowledge is light, right? So if knowledge is light, it's kind of like somebody showing you a torchlight. Now remember, too much of light can also blind you, and no light also blinds you. So we have to also always maintain a balance in our lives, that I don't have to go and read every book which is there, or make a goal that I'm going to read 50 books in the next 1 month. It's Kartik, I should read everything that is there. No, we should set our goals. And why should we set our goals? Because if you, as Vaisesika Prabhu, my dear spiritual master, says, that if you don't set a goal, then any road will lead you there. So if you don't have a goal, you don't know where you want to end up after your life ends, that's fine. Read any book that's available. It'll take you wherever. But if you are really wanting to go back to Godhead, then focus your energy, focus your attention on the books that Srila Prabhupada has written. Because you have the beautiful Bhagavatam shlokas, the beautiful shlokas in Bhagavad-Gita. And then you have purports from Srila Prabhupada, which are poetry in themselves. When he said words like misguided civilization, it struck to me like, yes, I used to call myself civilized because I can use a fork and a knife to eat my food. But real civilization is that look into your plate and see, what are you eating? And so there is so much of misguidance as to what exactly is good and what exactly is bad. And Prabhupada's books guide you into doing that. So when it comes to reading the books, don't copy others. Don't, compare yourselves to others and feel bad or feel good. Either ways, everybody in devotional service, we have to give as much as you can. So go to the best that you can offer. And the best that you can offer will increase as you start giving back to the community from where you are taking things. Your capacity to give will also keep on increasing by the mercy of Krishna and by the mercy of the parampara which is there. So, depending on your time, your place, and your circumstance, Prabhupada was not rigid. He came from India. He was a sannyasi. He was living in Vrindavan, where the cream, the la cream, resides in Vrindavan. So you can imagine he was coming from there, and he came overseas, violating the rules, but he did it for a good purpose. Actually, for a great cause, he did that. And when he came to America, he was facing a very different society over here, and he bent his rules according to the time, the place, and the circumstances, and look at the success that he achieved. So similarly, we also might have to sometimes adjust our lifestyles. It's a little here, a little wiggle here, a little wiggle there. Sometimes the material demands come a lot in our life, sometimes they are less, like that. So when the material demands go less, you can go a little beyond your goals, but have goals which are smart. They are simple, they are measurable, they are achievable, they're realistic goals, and they should always have a time that in this 1 week or every day I am going to read so many pages of a book, or I'm going to read one shloka of a book, or of a chapter. Or it could, some days it can even be like, you're so hard pressed, you had a little baby and the baby cried the whole day and you don't know what to do. Even just one shloka, one word from the shloka is very, very important, because it is transcendental, and anything which is transcendental will have its effect on us. So measure these things, to have a plan. So once you have a plan, then we have to follow the plan, and then we have to make adjustments and see. First of all, you have to monitor the plan to see where we are going. And we have got applications which are out there, which you can run on your smart devices, Apple or iPhone, or Androids. They are there, that's where you can punch in and say, these are the books that I want to read, these are the number of days that I want to finish it in. And so it'll come back and tell you that these are the number of shlokas, the number of pages you should read every day. And you can also go and mark that, okay, did I read it today? Did I not read it today? Set reminders, because we can get sucked into material life. So that way, when we are reading books, number one, always make a plan. Number two, always monitor your plan. Number three, you might have to adjust the plan that you have. Make use of technology. We are not averse to technology. If applications are available to help you monitor them. And there might be situations where you have to adjust them. Adjust your plans. Don't feel too bad. Every one of you is an individual. Every one of you is a devotee. It is guaranteed. It's a fact. It says that every soul is already, we are wired to be devotees of the Lord. It's just that under this material illusion, we sometimes behave in a different way. But those of you who are watching this on a Sunday morning at 7 o'clock, you are devotees in your own right. And of course, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, we know, Nitya Siddhya Krishna Prema Sadhyo Kabhinay Shamanadi Shutta Chitte Koriya Uday. So soul is already liberated. Soul is already a devotee of the Lord. That love for Krishna has got to be revived. And by reading Śrīla Prabhupāda's books, that love will get revived. It is a guarantee. Shrunvatam Swakatha Krishna. All the materialist tendencies will go away. And how do you listen to Krishna Katha? Reading the books is one of the ways of listening to it. Books don't need a battery to run off. Books you can take with you anywhere and everywhere. You can just curl up on a sofa and then read the books. The books have got the magic that they can transform you to a totally different place. You can read the pastimes of Krishna and read Golok Vrindavan when you have a book right next to you. And as you start getting into the books and as you start reading more and more and more about the books, then the next thing that comes is, there's a joyfulness, there's a joy that starts to spring in your heart, and it again begins to overflow. And when it begins to overflow, then the idea that comes is that I need to now, in an organized manner, distribute this overflow. And that is when you start to go out and distribute books. Because Prabhupada says, if you're going to distribute my books, you should also read them first. So you read the books, you understand the nuances of bhakti, the stories of people there. And then you also understand that how rich the Vedic literature is. And you have to read the books before you can distribute them, because when you go out to distribute books, you'll meet all kinds of people. Some of them must have already read the books, or different books which present the same present things in a different context. So we should be armed with that knowledge to be able to defend ourselves. And so if you're going and saying that I want to lead and lead in spreading this Krishna consciousness movement, which Prabhupada has set up, if I want to lead, then we have to read. It is very important for people to be well read, to counteract whatever objections people can raise, and also to present whatever Prabhupada has so painstakingly put together. He spent a big part of the later part of his life. I mean, throughout his life, he was in preparation, but especially the later part of life, when people think it's time for me to retire, that's when Prabhupada really put his whole heart, energy, life, soul, everything into distributing. And that picture of Prabhupada, while he's, just days before leaving his body, there's a disciple holding a microphone and he's still dictating the translations. That makes my heart, just overflow with so much of gratitude for Srila Prabhupada. And the least that we can do is to distribute the mercy that Prabhupada gave us, distribute it to as many people as possible here. So with that, I will come to a close here with a thank you for allowing me to speak my heart and share my story with you. And if there are any questions,
Thank you so much, Shraddha Devi. It was such a wonderful presentation, and we completely, it makes everything become so realistic when devotees share their experiences about how practicing Krishna consciousness or receiving a book changed their life and how they come to Krishna consciousness. It just immediately, strengthens our faith in going out, whether it's heat or cold or rain, and giving and making others as fortunate as we were to receive the mercy. So we do have, you covered on so many important points and so many practical advices. We have a couple reflections that I want to read. Somebody said, read to lead, which was brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. And someone said, if you don't have a goal, we can pick up any and every book that is possible. That Vaisesika Prabhu quotes very often. You hail from a community from ISV, which is not only very, prominent when it comes to book distribution, but also takes reading of Srila Prabhupada's books very seriously. We have a question over here where someone is asking, how do we keep ourselves inspired to read every day? Sometimes I'm more keen on hearing than reading. So I know you touched on a few more practical points, but if you want to add something else in answer to that question, that would be great.
And it happens to us all the time. All the time, and these books tell us, and we forget, because Krishna says, Matta smritir jnanam apohanam cha. From me comes memory and remembrance. So, and forgetfulness. So forgetfulness also comes, and we forget the things that has been read in the scriptures, and that's why we keep on going back again and again. It's all in the mind. It's all in the mind's algorithm getting messed up every now and then. And so I keep on remembering that picture of the bottles on the assembly line. Then bottles sometimes will stray, and then you need a little pad to bring the bottle back. Now, so on the days that, so first you have to understand that the day you're saying, I don't want to read those 40 pages of Bhagavad Gita, but I really want to listen, and I don't know what you want to listen to, but I'm assuming you want to listen to some other lecture or something like that. It could also be I want to listen to a Bollywood or a Hollywood song or whatever. Mind can take you. Manorathena sthite dhavato bahi. You can sit on the chariot of the mind and it'll take you to various places, right? So I'm assuming that some days you don't want to read your books, but you want to just listen, right? And the listening is Krishna Katha. It enters from your ears and goes to your heart. So by all means, do that, but don't lose the focus of your goal. Don't deviate too much from your path. If you think that listening to something for 5 minutes is good, then listen to it. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to tame your mind. Your mind is like a wild horse. So if you're trying to put a rein around the wild horse and pull it, sometimes, to climb the horse and stay seated on the horse, you have to pull the reins. And a wild horse doesn't like that, which a mind is. So sometimes you have to let go of the rein, let the horse do a little of its own, and then you pull it back. So similarly, the days that the mind is telling you, I want to listen to something, give it to it. Give it to the mind, but still have the reins in your hands, because you have a goal that you have to achieve. So keep the goal in focus. And if there are deviations, that's fine, but always come back, comes back. And Vaisesika Prabhu also quotes this thing, that like if you're going to fly from San Francisco to, say, Chicago, the pilots have to keep on steering the aeroplane back to its own track. And even a deviation of 1 or half a degree on the path, you could land up in a totally different city or fall into the sea like that. Similarly, in Bhakti Yoga also, keep your goals in mind. And Prabhupada gives us the nice and the narrow track, how you put those goggles or those straps around the heart so that it doesn't look here and there, just go straight. Similarly, you go straight. Once in a while, it's fine. But remember, we have to keep coming back, and understand philosophically that it's the mind that does it. You are not the mind. I hope that helps.
Yeah, yes, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. So just following, along the same lines, we really appreciated you sharing your personal experience of receiving the books and then leading us into reading Srila Prabhupada's book. And then following that, you said, go distribute those books, share that mercy. So someone has a question, and they're asking that sometimes we go out on the streets and we distribute books to people. They don't have faith. They sometimes take the book, sometimes they don't take the book. And sometimes when they take the book, they take them home, they don't read it, and they're not ready to accept Krishna consciousness. So how did we reconcile this feeling that are we really doing benefit by going out and distributing these books, whereas we don't see a result of that action? I'm paraphrasing the question for you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, karmarnevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. So he says that you have a right to perform your duty, but ma phaleshu kadachana, do not focus on the result. And then again, it is also about prataksham kim pramanam, right? I said whatever is there in front of your eyes, we believe it. And what we don't see, we think that it's not happening. Right? What I can't see just isn't there. Like the ostrich does that. It puts its head underneath the sand. Whenever it sees some danger, it just puts the head underneath the sand and thinks that nobody's coming, and it gets killed in that process. So we have to look at it as, I am distributing books. Why? Because I am following Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he said, Amar Agya hai. He said, it's my order that you go and distribute. I'm following the order. I am a servant of the Lord, right? Whatever happens to that person to whom I'm giving the book, that person is on his own journey, right? So, and we might give a book thinking, now I'm thinking and focusing on the end result, saying, I'm talking to him such wonderful stories of Krishna consciousness. Why is this person not getting it, right? Or why did he not take the book and immediately start reading the book? Or, why didn't he come back and join the temple like that, right? Sometimes it might even happen that he just goes and puts the book over there in his home and somebody else comes and picks that book. You don't even know that. And there are instances, so many instances, that not only somebody else comes in your time zone, somebody else can come after you are dead. And then they are throwing your books away, or they are cleaning up your room, and then somebody picks up the book like, wow, this looks so nice, this is so beautiful, and then they become devotees. So books, like I said, have got ideas in it, and you just plant the ideas. Prabhupada planted so many ideas in these books, and it is up for the ripe soul to pick it up. And how does the soul become ripe? We leave it up to Krishna to ripen them up, right? Sometimes. And then, and one more point I wanted to add about the previous question was, sometimes I don't have the enthusiasm to read. How do I read it? You get enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is an infectious disease. So you go and get in touch with people who are enthusiastic about reading. The days that you're not feeling good about reading, call a friend. Call a friend. That lifeline, call a friend. Use that call a friend lifeline who is enthusiastic about reading. They will get you back on track. That is why I really like the series that you have, ABCD, and you started with association. So it all boils down to association, right? So when it is when you associate with the right people, there are chances you will stay on the track there.
Absolutely. Such a beautiful answer. Thank you. Yeah, it makes so much sense that association is so uplifting. Sangha. And there's another question, which we're moving forward into, diving deeper into reading. So someone's asking, how do we make sure that we keep our consciousness in reading and actually relishing Srila Prabhupada's books and purports and what he's trying to say, rather than becoming too focused on just finishing. I have put a check mark, I finished Srimad Bhagavatam, put a check mark, I finished Bhagavad Gita. How do we balance this out? Any practical tips you have, or any sharing?
Sharing, yeah, exactly. I mean, when I distribute the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it's a huge bundle of books, it's intimidating to people, and they see 18 volumes. And so I always tell them that it's all about relishing and not about finishing. And so when I said that you make a plan, I also said you have to monitor it. And so one of the things about devotional service is that it has to be joyfully performed. And if the reading is not happening joyfully, if you're not getting the relish, it's time for you to go back and check your goals. Did I take more on my plate? Did I bite off more than I can chew? And now I'm choking on it. Is that what it is? Right? Go back and adjust again. Sometimes I have noticed that we also need to deliberate a little bit more on, I'm not wanting to read today, and let's see what are the reasons. Is it something that I'm a little angry with Krishna? Is it something I was expecting will happen to me and didn't happen? So in the beginning, when we take to devotional service, and I can tell you about myself, in the beginning, it was more like a miracle. And so I wanted this, and Krishna gave me this. And I want this, and Krishna is giving me this. And I wanted devotee association, and Krishna is giving me this. And then as you progress in devotional service, then it's like, I wanted this, and I did not get this. And when you did not get this, now how do I handle that? I can get angry and throw away everything, throw away all the books, distribute them all, give them away, and then say, I'm back to where I was. That was a better life. Or devotional service itself is purifying. And as you understand your swarup as a servant of the Lord, and as your surrender increases, right? It's difficult for us to surrender because you're also little controllers, right? So difficult. As the surrender increases, we begin to take even the reverses in our lives as an opportunity for us to learn something from there. So when these things come, when this thought comes to my mind that I don't want to read it, just turn to Krishna and say, Krishna, why is this nasty thought coming to my mind? Please guide me on what can I learn from the fact that I even had this thought. And again, remember, you are not your thoughts. So don't feel very, very guilty and say that I'm no useless and I can't do this, I'm a failure. You are not your thoughts. Thoughts just come and go. As a soul, you just need to observe your thoughts as they are going past you. And then choose. the right ones to act upon.
What a wonderful point. Thank you for bringing that. And yeah, it makes so much sense that, you've really moved us along the path of actually taking to reading not only seriously by setting goals, but actually revisiting our goals constantly.
Mhm.
So thank you so much. Personally, if devotees don't know, I want to share that there is an app called as Be a Sage Page by Page, which you can download. And very helpful app. You can put in the number of pages you want to read every day and how long it will take you to read. So thank you so much, Shraddha Devi, for joining us on the GBC SPT platform and sharing your wisdom with us. I hope you will come back again. And thank you so much to all our viewers for actively participating. We're just on day 2. We have so much more nectar coming up, so please subscribe to the channel. Please come back tomorrow for more katha. Thank you so much, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Krishna.
Anvattanams vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyev cha patitanam pavnebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Go Primat. Haribol.